Hey, this is Carl from Electric Bike Blog, and I'm here to show you our beautiful year-round greenhouse that we built to grow food all winter long without any heat. So here I am inside the greenhouse, and you can see it's definitely below freezing outside, but it's pretty toasty in here. And we've got a thermostat here to tell us what the temperature is, and goes down to the ground so we can accurate measurement. So when we started looking at building a greenhouse, we started pricing out greenhouses in about this size, which is 750 square feet, and it was about $4,000 just to get the metal frame. And we decided we wanted to do a budget of $4,000 for the whole greenhouse. So what we ended up doing is looking on Craigslist, and we found these amazing spans from this really nice guy who used to be Amish, who lived about an hour away. And he sold us all of these spans for $400 delivered. Now these spans are galvanized steel, and they're already about 25 years old, but they had almost no rust on them. And the metal is almost 1/4 of an inch thick. It's really difficult to drill through. So, and that was one of the biggest problems with this construction project, actually, was how thick the steel was on the spans. But you can see it's got metal wires that go across. That increases the strength of the spans. And we designed this whole greenhouse to take a 4-foot snow load. So we've got all of the spans on 2-foot centers. Now the strength of the structure is actually from these metal poles. So you see these vertical metal poles are basically just 1-inch steel poles that we pounded into the ground with a fence post pounder, and then lined them up about 2 feet apart before we pounded them in. And then I used a laser level to mark the tops of them, and then I just cut the tops with a pipe cutter, so they were all the same height. And then I put this piece of wood right here, this 2x4. I drilled a bunch of holes in it every 2 feet, and I put it over the top of the holes. And then I screwed that to the vertical metal post. So what you had was kind of a freestanding structure without any diagonal support. And I put all the metal in, and then we checked it for level, and it was at a level. So what I ended up doing was I drove the car where I needed it to be, and then I ratcheted it down with just some tie-down ratchets, and I ratcheted the building so it was straight before I put the windows in. Now all these windows that you see, with the exception of that sliding glass door that we use as an entrance, we got that from Lowe's for about $300. Everything in here is reclaimed from either buildings that were going to be torn down or from our local reuse center. And most of these windows we either got for free or paid less than $10 for. So it's amazing what you can get from people if you just ask. We posted something on Facebook, and a friend of ours was tearing down his beach house. Now all of these containers in the back, they're full of water, and we've got about 4,000 gallons of water with the tote there, and that works as a thermal mass. And behind that you'll see the green insulation is about R10 or so, and that the north wall, you really want it to be well insulated, and that water works as a kind of a thermal battery. So when it's hot in here, even in the winter when it's very cold, it'll easily get over 90 degrees in here. And the water stores up all that heat and then lets it out slowly at night. So we find that the greenhouse stays about 10 degrees warmer or so than the outside temperature, depending on how sunny it was the day before. So my wife insisted on planting a fig tree, so we've got a little fig tree back here. And then these are vole houses. We call them vole hotels. And basically we just put traps inside those without bait, and the voles can't resist going into the little holes, and they like eating in there and stuff, and then they basically just walk on the trap. So that works really well. And these row covers are really, really important. If you want to grow food without heat, you really need to have some row covers, and that increases the temperature under the row covers about one more zone. Now, right now we are in late February, so all the crops have almost all been eaten so far, and we have a few carrots left in the ground here, you can see, and they're not particularly happy because they've been sitting in the ground, and when you pull them up, they're extremely hairy. like they're kind of going to root again. But they taste really, really good because they go through this freeze-thaw cycle, and they just get incredibly tasty. And over here we have kale. So this is only 1 year old, but the kale is going to grow. It's not going to die. It's just going to keep growing. And within about 6 or 7 years, it's going to get so big that you're going to have a chainsaw to cut it down. And so we didn't harvest that much kale this year because we really wanted it to grow. And the kale will grow well in the rows that are further back. Carrots really seem to like the front row, which is much hotter with the glass because you get much more sun in the front. And the other vegetables that grew really well are daikons, did really well, and what else did we do? We did some beets. They did okay, not really. Spinach does very well in the cold. Kale is amazing. And we tried to grow cabbage and it really didn't work. So we actually planted a little bit too late. So we planted maybe mid-August and we should have planted in July. So we definitely learned from that. The food didn't get as big as, basically you're planting the food and nothing really grows in November or December. It just sort of sits in the ground and it's sort of a storage mechanism, and then it gets very tasty from the freeze-thaw cycle. And then we haven't built the irrigation system here yet, but we've got a tote, and you can see it's fed from a gutter system in the back, and this works really well. And even when it got down to negative 20 degrees and the outside shell of this tote froze and the valve froze, it didn't break. So we're really happy about that. And the nozzle for the tote is a little bit tricky, so we thought it was a screw-on, but the screw-on was just for the dust cap. It's actually a cam locking mechanism you can see there, and you can get those on Amazon for about $20. So the other thing is, in between the 55-gallon drums, we use larch so it wouldn't rot. We've got a lot of moisture coming down from the ceiling. We expected there to be a lot of mold and mildew problems, although that really hasn't happened yet, although it's only been our first year. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the Solex. So you can see here, we use this thing called Solex, which is about R4. And you cut it to the size that you need, and then you silicone the ends of it so it completely seals up, and it's like a little chamber in there. It's about R4. And we went with the Solex. It was about $2,500 with the Solex. It was our biggest expense because it had a 20-year no yellowing guarantee. And so far it's been really great. It was great to work with. I could definitely sit on it while I was working on the roof. And basically I would take a ladder with a 2x4 that was padded, and the 2x4 would span 3 or 4 of these spans and rest on that. And then you could climb up the ladder and then just sit right on the Solex and work. And I found this stuff called Tap Magic for for drilling the steel. I had a lot of problems drilling the steel. I was breaking a lot of bits, dulling a lot of bits. And then I started using this Tap Magic, and it was amazing. So I went from breaking 1 bit every 3 or 4 holes to being able to do probably about 1,500 holes with only 7 or 8 bits for the whole building. And I would definitely recommend you get on Amazon and buy a set of bits if you're going to do a project like this that are all titanium. So we did buy a small propane heater, you can see in the back corner there, that goes on a 5-gallon tank when it got down to negative 20, because we were concerned that the food would freeze and have problems. And it's very dangerous to run a propane heater like that in a closed space like this, because basically you use up all the oxygen and you can risk carbon monoxide poisoning. I wouldn't recommend it, and honestly, you don't need it. So even when it got down to negative 20 for 3 days in a row with no sun, as long as you have the row covers on the stuff, and you're growing hardy food, you're not going to have problems. And the wood chips really help too. It absorbs the moisture, it keeps the ground moist. And so we put wood chips in all the aisles. I'd highly, highly recommend that. And it's been a great project. We got about 500 hours into this, and the only things I would change is I would switch the door around so it swings in instead of swings out. That's really a problem in the snow. And then the sliding glass door, it freezes a lot in the wintertime, and we actually can't get in to the greenhouse except for when it thaws, and that's really a problem that we didn't anticipate. And these temperature sensors are remote sensing temperature sensors. We have 2 of them, one in the front and one in the back, and they're radio controlled, and they go all the way to the house. And it's great because we can keep track of what the temperature is in the greenhouse and see the difference in the front and the back, which really helps. And you can see here the Solex, you definitely want to mount it with rubber washers and screws, and these are the drain holes for the windows that I had to kind of cut so the windows could drain when the water goes in the crack here. That was a problem, the water was going inside. And then I used metal foil tape around the windows and doors. That's really critical, and you want everything to overlap. So where the Solex is, it overlaps the trim. You don't want the water getting in. And then we use a lot of metal flashing, both on the top here and at the bottom of all the windows and doors. You can see the metal flashing there. You just cut it, stick it up in there, and screw it in place. And this is the gutter. So we have a cover so it doesn't get stuff in it. And then we had to support the gutter underneath it with pieces of wood. And then eventually we'll have this is so that when it overflows, it goes out and freezes and doesn't go into the thing. And with the foam in the back, basically we just sandwiched these together. So we lined up the foam and put a piece of wood on the inside, a piece of wood on the outside, and just screwed from one piece of wood to the other. And it really pulled it all together, made it very tight. And when you put the Solex on too, you want to do it when it's about 50 or 60 degrees. So it expands and contracts. You don't want to do it when it's too hot. You don't want to do it when it's too cold. You can see here some of the cables go inside, some of them go outside the windows, whatever I can get to work, which looks kind of weird, but it's really okay. And then on the front, you want to have a drip edge to keep the stuff, so I just got some L drip edge, L channel, stuck it up in there, and you can see that. And then that sliding glass door opens for ventilation, but it's not very easy to open and close. So that's why we put it there, where we don't usually use it. And then the metal strapping is really important inside, the diagonal metal strapping, because that gives it its structural support. And we just bought a giant roll of metal strapping and put it in. And that's our year-round greenhouse that we grow food in, right there. You can do it too. About $4,000. We expect it to pay for itself in 3 or 4 years. And then around the top of it will be stuffed, so that we don't have to get leaks. And we sealed all the cracks and the spray foam as well. And that's when you get it with the $40 gun and spray it. It's an amazing product. It really works well to insulate. You can't recommend it enough. Oh, and at the bottom too, we put styrofoam going down about 1 foot, and then we dug a trench around it and put gravel in before we built it so that it would drain properly.